Mississippi Delta is sinking faster than ever, and scientists warn a collapse may be closer than we think.
This morning, forecasters predict rain and thunderstorms for the lower Mississippi, and that is the last thing people need in that flood-ravaged area.
From space, the Mississippi Delta unfurls like a living tapestry. Green marshlands, swirling bayous, silvery fingers pushing into the Gulf of Mexico. Where the Mississippi River pours its ancient cargo into the sea, land and water blend in twisting forms. A landscape forged by centuries of floods and silt. This is the cradle of American wetlands, home to millions, heart of Cajun culture, engine of shipping and seafood for much of the United States. But as satellites sweep over the delta's edge, another truth emerges. One not of growth, but erasure. Every day, entire city blocks of marsh vanish beneath the rising tide. Ground sinks with relentless speed, up to 2.5 centimeters each year. A slow-motion collapse so vast and silent that even the most stubborn locals admit the land looks different with every season. Less than 10% of the once vast sediment load now reaches the Bird's Foot Delta, the river's final outstretched hand. And still, the water creeps closer. This is no distant threat. Along these coastlines, flooding is no longer rare or seasonal, but a haunting rhythm. Streets that once stayed dry for generations now vanish underwater with every full moon and every distant storm. Levees built to protect now starve the delta's wetlands, feeding the crisis they were meant to solve. Canals slice through the heart of marshland, industrial arteries trading protection for profit. Scientists are sounding a singular warning. The Mississippi Delta is sinking faster than ever. The line between solid grounds and open ocean is dissolving before our eyes. At this rate, the only question left may haunt every soul who calls this place home. What does it mean for America when its greatest river begins to drown the land it once created? How close are we to losing the Delta entirely? Existential question. Chapter 1. Coastline disappears daily. From the deck of a shrimping boat outside Plaquemines Parish, the horizon is a fragile mirage. Where fishermen once steered between stretches of green, channels now yaw wider, carved by both storms and the invisible hand of the current. To the untrained eye, the spectacle feels eternal, marsh grass swaying, birds wheeling overhead. But to those who've watched this coastline shrink, every mile is a ledger of loss. Each dawn brings new boundaries. Satellite scans showing granular detail. The Mississippi Delta's coast is shrinking by roughly 10 city blocks of wetland every single day. In a single year, enough land dissolves to swallow a city the size of Miami Beach. Across Louisiana, once robust marshes and swamps now splinter into ragged islands and ghost forests, their bald cypress stumps jutting forlornly from brackish water. The causes are as layered as the delta's own spirals of mud: global sea level rise, the steady settling and compacting of ground, and the legacy of human engineering. Levees, once celebrated as guardians against the river's rage, now keep neighborhoods dry but imprison the river's own lifeblood, sediments that for millennia nourished this lush plain. Canals, dredged for navigation and oil, slice the marsh like wounds, drawing in salt water in their wake. This subsidence isn't theoretical. It is the slow grinding of geology itself, land weighing down on silts and peats below, collapsing under its own history. The delta is, inescapably, the fastest disappearing land on the planet. On aerial maps, the green fuzz of wetland withers year by year, replaced by blue. From above, it looks like rot spreading through a leaf, but here, the decay is death by water. Coastal towns already face the consequences. More than any other edge of the continental United States, the Gulf's lowland rim endures the fury of flood, storm, and tide. Flooding is now a fact of life, not a disaster. In places along the Mississippi coast, families build new homes on pilings, old cemeteries flood at every storm, and schools close when buses cannot run above the water. And still the shoreline retreats, a slow, unyielding defeat. What does it feel like to know the map itself is betraying you?
Chapter 2. Delta starved of mud.
At the heart of the delta's collapse lies a singular dilemma: sediment, or rather the absence of it. The Mississippi's mud, once infamous for its endless plumes, used to spill across hundreds of miles, expanding the very shape of Louisiana and building up the wild, wandering fingers known as the Bird's Foot Delta. But now, as the river flows past New Orleans and winds south, scientists note a tragic reversal. Most of the year, less than 10% of the river's sediment ever reaches the Bird's Foot Delta. The rest vanishes upstream, caught in reservoirs, dammed back by levees, siphoned away by agriculture, or shunted past the wetlands that so crucially need it. Decades of flood control were meant to tame the river's wrath, protect booming towns and rising cities. The levees kept neighborhoods dry, but they strangled the very process that built the land in the first place. Thousands of square miles of potential marsh, starved of fresh mud and nutrients, slumped and withered, leaving only brittle grids of cane and salt-crystallized earth. The challenge now, for scientists, engineers, and communities alike, is daunting. How do you restore mud to the marsh without disrupting the system that keeps ships and commerce flowing up the Mississippi? To revive the delta is to risk the navigation channels on which local economies depend. Federal agencies oversee a tightrope act, torn between environmental renewal and the health of jobs, shipping, and the seafood industry. But this balance grows more precarious by the day. Hundreds of square miles have already drowned, the land dissolving into open water as marshes collapse under their own weight. Recent studies point to a hard truth. Even if the sediment supply improves, the scale and speed of loss may push vast stretches of the delta beyond any chance of natural recovery. Is restoration even possible when starvation has already gone too far?
Chapter 3. Ground collapsing fast.
The Mississippi Delta is a paradox. Land born from mud, now being swallowed by the very waters that shaped it. For centuries, levees and canals kept the river in place, but beneath the surface, another force has been working in silence: subsidence. Subsidence is the slow sinking of land, driven by drained marshes, the removal of oil and groundwater, and the relentless compacting of layers built from centuries of flooding. In the delta, the descent reaches up to 2.5 centimeters every year, an almost invisible drop, yet powerful enough to push entire city blocks below sea level within a human lifetime. From Plaquemines Parish to Venice, Louisiana, the signs are everywhere. Sidewalks split and tilt. Backyards turn into reeds and marsh. Cemeteries slip under brackish pools where catfish now swim. Homes that once stood on solid ground are slowly giving way, not to flames or decay, but to the quiet erasure of Earth itself. What makes this collapse even deadlier is the ocean's rise. The Gulf of Mexico, swelling with climate-driven sea level rise, now outpaces the river's ability to deliver fresh mud. For thousands of years, sediment kept the delta afloat, replenishing land as fast as it sank. But that balance is broken. Water pours in. The ground sinks. The architecture of the delta unwinds at a pace scientists call alarming. Some wetlands have already passed the point of no return. marks by ecologists as zones of irreversible collapse. Marshes that once buffered storms and shielded towns are now open water. Each year, more land disappears, erasing not just habitats, but entire ways of life. The Mississippi Delta isn't simply vanishing. It's collapsing under its own weight. An unfolding disaster where the ground itself refuses to stand still. How do you prepare for a future where the ground itself refuses to stand still?
Chapter 4.
Hurricanes redraw coast. For centuries, the Mississippi Delta has endured storms, rebuilding again and again. But today, each hurricane extracts a higher price, not just in insurance claims, but in acres of land permanently lost to the Gulf. Hurricane by hurricane, the Delta's green armor disappears. Marshes that once blunted storm surges are shredded, drowned by saltwater intrusion and scarred by oil canals. Every major storm redraws the map. Wetlands vanish, bayous widen, and ghost forests rise where saltwater has killed every root. Coastal scientists warn the buffer is nearly gone. Thin ribbons of marsh are all that stand between factories, towns, and farms. And collapse is accelerating. With every flood, the sea pushes farther inland. With every levee break, the line retreats. Rebuilding has become ritual. Brick, sandbag, nail. But the truth grows clearer with each storm. The coastline isn't recovering, it's surrendering. The haunting question now, how long can the line between land and sea hold before the Gulf swallows it for good?
Chapter 5. Delta Survival Battle.
Inside the engineering rooms of federal agencies, scientists and policymakers race against time. Blueprints cover the tables, debating one impossible choice: funnel Mississippi sediment into dying marshes, or preserve the deep river channels that carry America's grain to the world. It's not just a Louisiana problem, it's a global trade dilemma. Every mile of wetland lost pushes the system closer to collapse. Fish nurseries vanish, oysters retreat, birds lose nesting grounds. Ecological loss translates directly to economic shock. Shrinking seafood harvests, skyrocketing insurance, ports demanding constant dredging. The Mississippi Delta isn't just disappearing, it's threatening the lifeline of America's economy. Frustration boils at town halls. Residents demand protection, warning that cuts to restoration projects mean not only storm devastation, but job loss. Harbour crews, levee builders, shrimpers, all at risk. Scientists weigh brutal trade-offs. Open the river and you rebuild land, but risk disrupting shipping lanes that move US exports worldwide. Keep the river flowing for commerce, and the marsh dies piece by piece. So what price is too high? To save Louisiana's vanishing coast, or to gamble with the collapse of America's economic artery?
Chapter 6. Delta faces collapse.
Recent studies take the warning to a new, chilling pitch. Where once ecologists debated whether the Delta could be saved, new data leaves dwindling room for hope. The Mississippi Delta marshes, they now conclude, are in a state of irreversible collapse. Even with all possible engineering projects and investments, the acceleration of sea level rise and the deficit of new sediment mean thousands of square miles are at risk of drowning. Look to the Bird's Foot Delta, that iconic splay at the river's mouth. Here, for centuries, new land was born with every high tide and spring flood. Now, barely 1/10 of the Mississippi's yearly sediment makes it this far. The rest is dammed and channeled for upstream use, the ancient rhythm of land building broken. As sea levels rise, salt water infiltrates further each year, poisoning freshwater marshes, destroying their root systems, and opening more land to the appetite of the Gulf. At this pace, the process accelerates. Every acre lost makes the next more vulnerable.
The collapse is not only probable, but exponential, a domino line of loss, each piece hastening the next. What makes this moment different is its finality. In the past, communities adapted and rebuilt, marshes rebounded, and the river shifted course to create anew. Today, the mathematics is merciless. Even the remaining marshes, those tenacious patches that have survived every disaster, are now at risk of vanishing within a generation. Is it possible to witness the loss of an entire ecosystem in real time and do nothing?
Chapter 7. Delta Survival Fight. With the Delta's fate on a knife edge, the battles are no longer just scientific. They move to law, protest, and policy. Local officials demand bold action, pressing to shift restoration from pilot projects to full-scale deployment. Divert the river! Build new land! Act now! They cry. But money, time, and guarantees remain elusive. Every solution carries risk. Diverting Mississippi mud into dying marshes could rebuild land, but it may disrupt container shipping and threaten industries. Some communities may even be displaced by the very projects meant to save the Delta. Scientists are divided. Some urge managed retreat, accepting certain areas must be abandoned to the sea. Others call for large-scale restoration, convinced collapse can be slowed if funding and political will align. Yet time itself is running out. Caught in the middle are the people, fishermen, dock workers, teachers, living with the consequences. Each headline of loss feels personal. In parishes across the coast, frustration rises. Is anyone truly watching as this American heartland drowns? Can an entire region rally in time to save what's left? Chapter 8. Maps erased forever. In museum archives and family albums, people keep the old maps. They trace fingers along inlets once shaded green, recalling the places where fish camps once stood, or where roads have since been swallowed by water. The maps are memory, proof that the shape of the land is not permanent. For scientists, mapping the Delta's decline is an endless task. Each adjustment records another fragment of history erased. Each revision highlights unsettling realities. The places most at risk are not remote outposts, but the ground that anchors cities, neighborhoods, and whole communities. Worse still, the crisis at the Mississippi Delta is not isolated. Around the entire rim of the United States, coastlines are succumbing to similar fates, with flooding more severe and persistent than anywhere else in the nation. But here, the Delta's collapse is precedent, a warning for what could come to states as far afield as New Jersey or Texas, as water and weather remake the geography of home. Every year, new stretches of the Delta's edge are declared uninhabitable. Families relocate, towns shrink, insurance companies redraw the lines. Some places disappear so completely that their names persist only on fishing maps or in the lyrics of local musicians. The names remain, but the land does not. The loss ripples forward, economic hope fading, ecosystems unraveling, cultural ties stretched to breaking. The tragedy is not merely ecological, but personal. Shrinking maps, vanishing futures, and the knowledge that each day's delay only accelerate the approach of what seems inevitable. What remains when the very ground beneath you is no longer promised tomorrow? Chapter 9. Final Delta Warning.
In the end, the fate of the Mississippi Delta is a battle measured by inches and days, but also by decisions become in faraway rooms. Engineers and scientists warn that without immediate, courageous action, the Delta's collapse could trigger devastation not just for Louisiana, but for America's entire economy and ecology, in lost commerce, broken food chains, and disrupted lives. And still, the river flows. Massive, ancient, indifferent to the empires and ambitions built along its banks. It is at once the destroyer and creator, the path to salvation and collapse. The people, those who rise each dawn to fish, to farm, to teach, are left to confront a future steeped in uncertainty. Every family, every business, every tradition now stands on the trembling threshold between land and sea. The Mississippi Delta is not just a relic or a crisis. It is a living alarm, a signal that the bargains made with nature are never truly final. The marshes and bayous, the highways,
Perched atop sinking mud, the culture and the community, all are now drawn on lines that shift season by season. Because every whispered promise of restoration, every million poured into new sediment diversions, every community meeting under flickering lights is an answer to one profound question. Can we save what remains in the face of time, tide, and our own choices? As water laps where grass once grew, as each block of marsh is erased from the map, the Delta's story is still being written. Every day, every tide, every storm. Watching from space, from boats, from the edge of flooded towns, the nation holds its breath. Because here, beauty and destruction, hope and despair are divided by only the width of a drowning shoreline. And in the Mississippi Delta, the water never stops pressing forward. If you want to witness every struggle, every warning, and every sign of hope as the battle for the Delta unfolds, remember, this story has only just begun.